and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Hum.
I'm Ann Northrup, attempting to roll up my tight sleeves to get started with the news.
Because there's a lot of it, starting with the fact that a federal judge in Michigan has overturned that state's ban on same-sex marriage. This is the 14th consecutive court to rule in favor of marriage equality.
And it's a stunning decision, which we will take great joy in quoting from.
And the marriages did get underway. The decision was on a Friday. Marriages got underway on Saturday, but the Sixth Circuit later stayed the decision.
Yeah. Vice President Joe Biden, in a speech to an HRC dinner in LA, says that anti-gay cultural norms do not deserve respect.
That was pretty strong.
Yeah.
A lesbian in New York City.
Well, they used to say, you know, you could believe this or that or whatever.
A lesbian in New York City has won a big anti-discrimination suit against a restaurant where she was that led the staff in anti-gay prayers.
Well, that may become legal any minute now as the Supreme Court considers the Hobby Lobby case, which does concern us, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah. The anti-gay head of the Catholic League is given permission to march in the LGBT Pride Parade.
I'll ask Andy whether he thinks Bill Donahue will march.
Okay.
The out-gay Speaker of the Rhode Island House has suddenly resigned after an FBI raid on his house.
No, state police.
I thought the FBI was involved too.
Maybe.
Whatever. Anyway, no one's talking about why they raided it, but he's out as Speaker of the House.
And Fred Phelps is out. He's dead.
San Mateo, California health officials are using fake Grindr profiles to do AIDS education. I'm not sure that I think there's anything wrong with that, but we'll see.
We will discuss it.
And Andy will review Rocky.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you why all the lesbians are out of the reality competition shows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So we start with Michigan.
Yeah.
This is Federal District Court Judge Bernard Friedman in the Sixth Circuit.
Can I give a little background?
Sure. Of course. That's what this show is for. It's for putting everything in context.
Exactly. And explaining not only what the news is, but why it's important and what you need to know about it.
Okay.
No?
Well, sure.
Okay.
I was going to get to some of that, but all right.
Okay. Well, a lesbian couple in Michigan had adopted several children, 2 by one by the other, and they wanted to be acknowledged as parents of all the children together. So they went to court to get second parent adoption status in Michigan, where they're not allowed to get married, but they wanted rights to the kids. And the judge took a look at this and he said, well, really, this case is not so much about adoption, it's about marriage. It's about the fact that you're not allowed to get married, because if you were allowed to get married, then you would be able to adopt these kids jointly. So I want you to refile this case as a marriage case. And everybody went, whoa.
Well, not everybody, obviously. This is Judge Friedman, who is a Reagan appointee.
Yes. And he insisted on conducting a full trial.
Yeah.
Because this was originally filed just before the Supreme Court made its decision about the Prop 8 case in California. And the Supreme Court, found a way to declare no standing for the right wing, so we won the case. And there's marriage in California, but it wasn't a real full-scale thing on marriage.
We didn't win the case. We just, we won the right to get married in California.
Exactly. So this Michigan judge looked at this and said, you know what? Let's do a full trial on the marriage issues.
Having a full trial is always challenging to our opponents to come up with people who can provide some rational explanation for continuing to deny us the right to marry.
They have to look under a lot of rocks, and the first one they looked under was a Yale graduate school who was going to ask to testify as an expert on some of this, and the judge said, no, I'm not certifying you as an expert. Someone else is still grading your papers.
Yes. So they used this guy, Regnerus, who did this bogus study, which has been totally discredited about gay parenting, essentially.
I have to point out that his name is Regnerus.
I'm sorry, Regnerus.
Yes.
Yes, I'm taking the E out there.
Yeah.
Regnerus, and he gets up on the stand, and and he's eviscerated on the stand. But in the decision, the judge really lets him have it. He says the testimony of Regnerus is entirely unbelievable and not worthy of serious consideration. The study was hastily constructed at the behest of a third-party funder. And that they wanted to prove that same-sex families were damaging to kids. And then he goes on to say, you're saying that even if we accept your thing about having gay parents is suboptimal and therefore they shouldn't get married, well, let's talk about what the optimal thing is for kids. It's suburban, wealthy Asians, essentially, and everybody else can't get married. And he's saying, you're being ridiculous, Regnerus. And so it was quite lacerating.
Well, the beauty of this trial is that it brought all this out, and there was a lot of testimony about how the Regnerus study had been created in the first place, and that right-wingers got together in Washington and held a little confab where they said, all right, this marriage train is getting out of hand, and we have to stop it. And how can we stop it? Oh, we have to attack them as parents.
Yeah.
We got to gin up some phony information, and we'll fund Regnerus, who has been disavowed by his home university where he teaches at the University of Texas.
He should just crawl back into his hole.
He should.
And he's discredited for life. But of course, he couldn't get past this judge because this judge once had a lesbian clerk who had a child with her partner while was working for him, and he got very involved with the family. So he was weighing this testimony against his own experience.
Well, the clerk was Judith Levy, who we told you last week has just been appointed to the district court in the Eastern District of Michigan by Obama and confirmed by the United States Senate, I think 97-0.
We're taken over.
At one point, when he hired her, she was pregnant. And she didn't want to tell him she was pregnant because she was out as a lesbian, but she thought it'd be too confusing to him. So she sort of came out about being pregnant after he had hired her, and he sort of went, oh, really? And then she got pregnant with twins while she was working for him, and he got very educated.
So, this is the 14th court in a row to rule for marriage equality. It's the 9th consecutive federal judge to do so. This guy releases the decision at 5 o'clock on a Friday, which is usually bury the news day, but this kind of has a way of getting out.
Not to mention all the courts and offices are closed.
So the clerks who want to do the marriages have to scramble, and several counties did. And we have a picture of lesbians lining up there in Michigan in the cold online to get married because they know this is probably going to go away. But several counties did, and 315 couples total were married. But the state has declared that we won't recognize these marriages.
Well, this is what happened in Utah, too. We won at the district court. The district court refused to stay the decision. Couples raced to get married immediately. Hundreds of couples got married. The state eventually won a stay from the Supreme Court. And the federal government announced they would recognize those marriages because they're legal marriages. But the state said, we're waiting for the appeals process. So now Utah couples are suing the state for recognition. And the same thing's going to happen in Michigan.
Well, there's a great hunger out there for getting married, obviously.
Well, it's one thing to stay these decisions pending appeal, pending some final resolution by the Supreme Court. Although what the district court decisions are saying is you're not going to win on appeal.
Right.
So we don't want to stay these decisions. But I understand the Supreme Court saying we want uniformity or whatever, and we're going to get to this. I don't like it, but I understand it. But to say that you're not going to recognize couples that have gotten legally married in the interim, I think is just heinous.
And the decision for the stay was a 2-1 decision at the appeals level there.
Yeah.
So, all right. So some other things besides Michigan.
Well, a good little resource, the legal organizations that are fighting the Utah and Oklahoma cases and in the 10th Circuit, where they're going to be appealed, have decided to put up a website that will educate people on all the cases in the 10th Circuit. This is National Center for Lesbian Rights, Kate Kendall, who we had here a couple of weeks ago, and others working on these cases. So if you want to see what's going on with the cases in Oklahoma, Utah, Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, and Kansas, because there are cases in all those places, you can go to 10thcircuit.org, 10thcircuit.org, for information about all the 10th Circuit cases.
Yeah, in Wyoming, they formed a new statewide campaign for same-sex marriage, launched with a rally at the Capitol last week. That's where, as you say, NCLR has the lawsuit. They are also seeking civil marriage in the legislature and an anti-discrimination bill for next year.
We're busting out all over. In Tennessee, a judge rejected the state's motion to stay the recognition of 3 married couples who got married elsewhere pending appeal. But
I imagine the Sixth Circuit will give them a stay there.
I imagine so. And in Kentucky, a judge there has stayed the pro-marriage ruling pending appeal.
Also in the Sixth Circuit. Otherwise, those weddings would have gotten underway on March 21st. In Pennsylvania, their big case with the ACLU on same-sex marriage goes to trial May 28th in Philadelphia in federal court. A new poll in Philadelphia says that 57% now support same-sex marriage, 37% oppose.
In Mississippi, a lesbian couple who got married in New York have registered their New York marriage license to start to establish a record that they are legally married in New York and try to move that into the courts in Mississippi.
Well, this is the first time that's happened, and it's in Rankin County Chancery Clerk's office, and it's part of the We Do campaign of Southern Equality.
Which is a terrific campaign. Go to the Campaign for Southern Equality if you want to know more about what's happening in the South.
And then there's an interesting case in Alabama. A man died and his male spouse is suing for wrongful death in federal court because they were married.
Yes,
but
we've been following
the
this
development is that the deceased's mother is seeking to intervene in the case because she's the one who would lose out if the husband gets...
Yeah, she's against recognition of the marriage, and she is quite vociferous about it, really ugly.
Yeah.
In Illinois, Republican representatives who supported marriage beat right-wing opponents in the primary races last week. So that's considered a good thing.
And in the congressional primary there, Republican Susan Atanus, A-T-A-N-U-S, won the right to challenge the incumbent Democrat, Jan Schakowsky. She believes God is angry about same-sex marriage and abortion, and that's why we have tornadoes, autism, and dementia.
Luckily, Jan Schakowsky is very popular.
And the Republican state chair asked her to withdraw from the race before she won, but she didn't withdraw.
There's a married binational couple who are the founders of the software maker Rarebit, who are boycotting Firefox, the
Mozilla.
Yeah, the internet provider, because they've just promoted a very anti-gay guy who worked there at Firefox already.
Brendan Eich, E-I-C-H.
He's the new CEO, and he was a donor to the Prop 8 campaign, the pro-Prop 8 campaign.
So they're taking a hit on this because they do a lot of business for Mozilla, and they're willing to forego it and not make any more apps for them until they get rid of this guy.
Yeah, how do you feel about that?
Well, I mean, when you're, they would be benefiting a company, the profitability of a company of a guy who is, making a lot of, giving money to these right-wing causes. I mean, it's a thought. You know, I mean, that's why I don't go to Mel Gibson movies, you know, because he's a big anti-Semite. I know he can be a good actor sometimes, you know. Well, seriously, I'm just saying, you know, should we judge these things?
Well, and here's another question. It has now been revealed that the American Foundation for Equal Rights, Chad Griffin and Hollywood pals, who put together the anti-Prop 8 case that none of the big gay groups wanted to do, hired Ted Olson and David Boyce and paid Ted Olson $6 million and paid David Boyce $500,000.
It wasn't a labor of love?
It was not, and most of these cases are done pro bono. Robbie Kaplan, working for Paul Weiss Rifkin, did the case pro bono for Edie Windsor. The nonprofits, the ACLU, the Lambda Legal, NCLR, they're all nonprofit organizations that pay moderate salaries and do these cases for no fee. They just raise money. So, you know, do you pay Ted Olson $6 million to do this? I would say that they raised the money from these Hollywood people. And it's not like we paid our taxes to pay Ted Olson $6 million.
Right.
I would like Ted Olson to be taking these cases pro bono.
I mean, certainly Lambda and the ACLU are paid as well, but not that much.
No. It's raising a few eyebrows.
Yes?
Yeah. I'm not ultimately passing judgment, but
a big Christian charity called World Vision USA, they do disaster relief, evangelical group, told their employees they're not endorsing same-sex marriage, but that sexual activity by employees with a same-sex spouse is now okay.
Well, they're an umbrella group for about 50 denominations, and it ranges from the United Universalists, who are very pro-gay and have, you know, gay employees with spouses, to the Southern Baptists, who condemn homosexuality. So this became an issue for World Vision and in sending people abroad to do this kind of work. And they said, look, you know, if you want to do it, you can do it. It doesn't mean we're passing judgment, but you can do it. And the Southern Baptists are freaking out. They do not like this.
Well, they're not freaking out in Punta Gorda, Florida, where they unanimously passed a domestic partner registry on March 19th. No one spoke against it. It's limited in its application to things like hospital visitation, decisions at death of partner, and decisions affecting the education of the kids. It has a second reading on April 2nd.
Okay.
Maybe some people show up then.
Okay. Well, Joe Biden was the keynote speaker at a human rights campaign dinner in Los Angeles, and he kind of blew the house away.
Well, as he does, because he does tend to speak off the cuff. I don't imagine he preaches from text. He called LGBT workplace discrimination barbaric. Whoa. And then he said, hate can never be defended because it is a cultural norm. I've had it up to here with cultural norms. Well, I mean, Joe, we love you. You gotta love the guy.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of people would be upset by that.
No one in the audience spoke up for what HRC is supposedly pushing for, which, or Chad Griffin certainly could have said in introducing him, and we hope he's going to come out for an executive order on LGBT rights for federal contractors. Nobody brought it up. If we'd been there, we would have brought it up. I wouldn't have cared if I was in the press gallery.
That's exactly why we weren't there. But if you would like to see Joe Biden's stem winder, you can find it on the HRC website at hrc.org. I thought about saving it up to use on this show. It's about half an hour, but you can find it on your own there.
Yeah.
More will show up before our end of the year show with clips like that.
In California, the opponents of that transgender student law have filed suit with Secretary of State. They are still seeking to get on the ballot, even though they've been told that they can't.
And the prediction is that after they fail with their suit against the Secretary of State to revive the signatures that have been thrown off the ballot, they will then go and sue county by county, school by school. They are not giving up on trying to stop this transgender rights bill for kids, which went into effect January 1st with no reported bad...
because they lost on the marriage thing big time.
So this is the way they
now
keep raising
they're picking on
money.
transgender kids.
Yeah. By the way, there's a report out
Have they
from
no shame?
Media Matters that says there have been 0 attacks by cross-dressed men in women's restrooms since 12 states have passed gender identity and expression non-discrimination laws.
Yeah.
You know, this is all a big canard. It's scare tactics. And Jerry Springer has seen the error of his ways. He's decided in 2014 he's learned that tranny is not an acceptable word, so he's going to stop putting that word in the title of every other show he does.
I really was not particularly aware that he was still on and they weren't all repeats.
Well, this came up in connection with one of his more recent shows, Trannies Twerk It Out.
All right.
No more. Jerry has sworn off.
Okay. In Idaho, there were protests over the delayed anti-discrimination legislation there, and we have a video to show.
Hundreds
about
are now
this.
protesting as the legislative session ended, asking to add the words.
In tonight's Legislative Watch, hundreds of Add the Words protesters surrounded the Capitol tonight in an effort to get lawmakers' attention.
They want to get a hearing that would give protections for gay, lesbian, and transgender Idahoans. Glenn Beebe tells us why they say they're tired of waiting.
Hundreds filled the Capitol steps in support of adding words to the Idaho Human Rights Act that would grant protections to gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender people in the state. For over 8 years, members of the LGBT community have tried to get the legislation passed, but it's never gotten a hearing. Some lawmakers say they don't feel the legislation is needed, but organizers say public opinion is moving in their favor.
We reject that excuse. We know that the latest polling shows that 81% of Idahoans think it's wrong to fire someone just because they're lesbian, gay, bisexual, or transgender.
Some protesters took the time to give the testimony that they would if the legislature gave the chance. One of those people was Joe Christofferson, who says he was fired from a national pizza chain back in 1998, just as he was beginning to come out.
It did happen to me, and it's happened to so many other people, and we haven't been allowed to share this because they refuse to have a meeting or a committee meeting where people can testify and share their stories.
In the past, some Republican lawmakers have said if there was data to support the claims, then they would take a look at the bill. Although Christofferson says there isn't data because no company would write that down as the actual reason. Democratic Representative Matt Erpelding of Boise says not having the legislation is keeping people from being who they really are.
They've been afraid to do that because they're afraid they're going to lose their job or they're afraid they're going to lose their housing. And now whether or not that would actually happen is irrelevant because that fear and living with that fear is not a burden that anyone should ever have to deal with.
And once again, that was Glenn Beebe reporting. KBOI2 News did try to contact some of the House and Senate leaders for comment, but they did not return our calls. It is unclear at this point if there will be another protest before the session is over.
So they're acting like we can't pass this law unless there's actually some cases of discrimination. But people are, well, one of the things they did in New York City after 15 years of trying to pass the thing was the Human Rights Commission, even though there was no law, actually collected complaints that they couldn't act on, and then they issued this big, thick report, and it gave cover to the people who wanted to vote for it, saying, oh, there's a terrible problem here, isn't there?
Well, there's a problem in Missouri where they did write it down. Hannibal LaGrange University, a private Christian college, had a student who they'd given an academic and athletic scholarship to. He'd been at the school for a couple of years. He was very successful. He'd won a lot of honors. And then he had to withdraw for illness, and a couple of months later, just a couple of months, he applies for readmission, but he had come out as gay on his Facebook page, and they said, oh, no, that is against the morals of our private Christian college.
If you want to find out who's gay through Facebook pages, just go to Facebook. It's apparently very easy to figure out.
You can keep an eye on all your students and all your employees.
Yeah. Back to New York City, an appeals court there upheld a $1.6 million in damages judgment for a lesbian chef at Marianne's Mexican restaurant, which has a branch at, in Chelsea. But this was in Tribeca, Mirella Salimi. It was discrimination, but she was suing for discrimination based on religion and sexual orientation. The restaurant held weekly mandatory prayer meetings where a pastor would say that homosexuality was sin and gays were going to hell, also used the word faggot. She was retaliated against for complaining about this and for not firing another gay employee. The court rejected the trial judge's failure to instruct the jury about the city law forbidding discrimination based on religion, saying the law was intended to protect victims of employment discrimination, not the perpetrators of discrimination, who are the religious people in this case.
Because they're claiming a religious exemption.
Which is what we're all talking about this week.
Well, we're talking about it in particular in the context of this case at the Supreme Court that was argued this week. Two cases, actually, but it sort of all goes under the title of Hobby Lobby, which is a company that does business, but it's owned privately by a family that has heavy religious values.
And they say that if the Obamacare requires us to carry reproductive rights kind of stuff in terms of contraception,
insurance that would allow its employees to have coverage for contraception.
They are insisting that those pills can be used as an abortifacient. And it's abortion. And Justice Roberts agrees with them, and he's calling it an abortion case, for God's sakes.
Yes.
I mean, which it isn't.
Well, it isn't, because it's much broader than that. And this is the foot in the door doctrine that these people are trying to do.
Yes.
And what the female members of the Supreme Court pointed out was, well, you say this is about their religious objections to abortion, but really what this opens the door to is if they have any religious objections, say, to a gay employee or to any
vaccines, to surgery, if they were Christian Scientists,
blood
or something,
transfusions,
or whatever.
They would be allowed to claim that as a corporation owned by religious people. And it's not looking good.
No. And the person arguing the case for the other side was Paul Clement, who argued the DOMA case and lost.
Who's really pissed because he's lost all his marriage cases.
Yeah.
But here's what's likely to, or could happen. There are three ways this could be decided, basically. One, we could win, and they could forbid companies doing business in the public sphere to claim this religious exemption. They should say non-discrimination laws trump those religious exemptions, which is basically what they say about historically has been said about non-discrimination laws.
But they say that, but they seem to be looking for a way to protect these companies as privately held as opposed to publicly held companies.
Yes.
I don't know what the hell the difference is in the public sphere if you're doing business in the public sphere, but they seem to be casting about for that.
That's what we're afraid of, that they will define these companies as family-owned, privately owned, not selling stock to the public, and therefore able to make assert that they have some sort of human quality as a company, even though they're doing business with the public. And that is going to redound. There are a lot of family-owned companies.
If we lose this thing, it'll make the Arizona thing look like a Tea Party.
It's really not looking good. And Anthony Kennedy, who is, of course, the swing vote on this because everyone else divides in their predictable ways, was asking questions going both ways. And
he's a switch hitter.
Well, he could easily decide that the middle road is protecting family-owned businesses.
Tony, this would hurt your gay friends who you've been so nice to in the other decisions. Don't do it.
Well, this is the court that gave corporations free speech rights and allowed them to make unlimited campaign donations. So that's what we're talking about.
And some of these religions have very bad views against us. We've told you about the Atla Church in Harlem, which posted the sign that said Jesus would stone homos. So a lesbian, Jennifer Louise Lopez of Harlem, knocked on the door and said, "I saw your sign, I'm here for my stoning." And they said, "Oh, you have to come back tomorrow. We don't have any stones." That's what they said.
Well, that's what the house cleaner said. She didn't
Yes.
get as far as the pastor who's saying this. He might have picked up a stone right there. But there's going to be a demonstration at this church this Saturday, 11:30 a.m. at the Atla World Missionary Church, 36 West 123rd Street.
Yeah.
And the title of the demonstration is, I'm Here for My Stoning. So people are going to go do that. Now, there was also an unfortunate incident, as long as we're into religious discrimination. The historically black universities have more and more been dealing with gay issues and supporting their LGBT students. And there was a Pride Week celebration at Spelman and Morehouse together in Atlanta this last weekend. But in the midst of this, they found chalked on the sidewalk slogans like "Homo sex is sin." So, you know, there are some dissident opinions.
Well, of course, and they're cowards as well because they're not signing their names to their chalk.
Exactly.
Now, in New York, we told you about the St. Patrick's Day parade, and they're keeping gays out. So the Catholic League's Bill Donahue said he wants to march in the Gay Pride Parade with a sign that says, "Straight is great."
He said, they'll never let me do that.
And they said, you want to march? Fine, because it's in keeping with our theme, which is we have won when we are one. Get it? And so Donahue was balking at going to the training and maybe one of his members having to wear one of the Pride T-shirts.
He's distorting it. He's lying about it. He's claiming that it is a training on being gay or being gay friendly, when
you got to get to know us better, Bill.
The training is about how to line up on the street and how many marshals you have to have and how you proceed in the line of march. That's what the training is.
Well, he has also called for a boycott of Guinness and Heineken, which withdrew their sponsorship from St. Patrick's Day parades. But he also called Heineken slop. It's no good, it's slop. Now, Bill, if you were a really honest person, you should have told us this when they were a sponsor of the St. Patrick's Day parade, that we were drinking this slop, and you should have protested them as a sponsor.
So I'm fine with him marching, but he's threatening to bring thousands of people with him. That could get a little...
If they all carry straight is great signs and they don't carry anti-gay signs, I don't have a problem.
Yeah, well, that is the condition under which he is allowed.
But if you try anything, it could get ugly.
We did call his bluff, but I think he's trying to.
And it was nice to see the television ratings for the St. Patrick's Day parade go way down this year.
Yes, although the leader of the parade, Dunleavy, is saying we've overcome adversity and we will continue our format.
Yeah. Now, Nate Silver, who's the out gay prognosticator, used to be at the Times, now has this 538 thing going. He's saying that Republicans have a 60% chance of taking back the U.S. Senate, but we've heard this from a lot of people, and we don't expect to keep the Senate this year unless there's unless a lot of things break our way. However, so it's not an unusual prediction, but apparently the easiest way for Democrats to raise money in this country is by using the subject line, Nate Silver's dark prediction. That gets people to open it up and open up their pocketbooks. And right after I read this thing, I got one of those from People for the American Way.
And you opened it up?
No, I didn't.
No, okay.
Sorry, People for the American Way. You're a fine group. But
we did have a victory in Georgia where the state Senate failed to revive the religious freedom bill. The anti-gay senators blamed large-moneyed special interests for killing it.
Okay.
Well, whatever.
So, in Rhode Island, the out-gay House Speaker, Gordon Fox, we've told you about him, has resigned his post, and he is under investigation.
Resigned his post as Speaker.
Yes. He's
not resigned from the House.
No one is saying what this investigation is about. You said you've heard something about finances, but his house was raided by state officers.
Yeah, so they already have
in broad daylight.
He's keeping his seat in the House, but only till the end of the year. He says he will not run again. And he did give up the speakership, and they've already got a new speaker there.
Well, he's doing better than we're doing in New York, where we've got all these vacancies, and Governor Cuomo won't call special elections to fill them, mostly in communities of color. Shame on him.
The fewer people we have in the state legislature.
Stop it. I'm not a fan of our legislature.
At all. The worst.
But
I'm a fan of the Maryland legislature, where the House of Delegates committee there has passed the Gender Identity and Expression Bill, which has already passed the full Senate, both of which are ahead of our benighted legislature.
In Kansas, Fred Phelps died. He was 84. Well, this is the Westboro Baptist Church, God Hates Fags Ministries. His son, Nathan, of the group called Recovering from Religion, said that unfortunately his father's ideas do live on at Westboro, and he was denied the opportunity to visit him at the end. Nate called for an embrace of the LGBT community as our equals and as our true brothers and sisters.
Fred leaves a sad legacy, but we
we're going to miss him.
Yes
Are
and
you
no.
kidding?
Yes and no.
Oh, it's the best thing that ever happened to us.
Well, let's say his time has passed.
Well, yeah, and that church did 53,000 demonstrations in the last 15 years.
And instead we have Scott Lively running for governor of Massachusetts as an independent. Mass Equality, the gay rights group in Massachusetts, held a candidates forum for the gubernatorial candidates. All but one showed up. All the Democrats, 3 independents, not the Republican who just said he had a conflict in timing. But all the Democrats and independents were all very pro-LGBT and talking about employment protections and youth and all that. But Scott Lively, who is running for governor...
The Fred Phelps of Massachusetts.
And Uganda and places, and Russia and all over the world, sat there and just laid into gay people endlessly. Every time he got a chance to talk, it was... homosexuality should not be promoted, protected. It's good to discriminate against gay people.
What do you think that's all about with him? What's going on with him? Why are they so obsessed?
I think that would take a long psychological interview
Ask the therapist
with Scott.
in the audience here. Yeah. New York City's Mayor de Blasio has appointed education activist Christine Marinoni, an out lesbian and married to Cynthia Nixon, as a special advisor for community partnerships at the Department of Education.
She has a long history as an activist in education matters.
It's a good appointment.
Absolutely. The National Center for Lesbian Rights and Equality California have written to the California pension system and asked them to divest their $25 million investment in a couple of really bad Russian companies that do this sort of YouTube or Facebook-like system in Russia, where the neo-Nazis are posting their videos of enticing young gay people and beating them up and humiliating them. Torturing, yes. So we'll see how the California pension system reacts to that.
Johnny Weir and Victor Weir Voronov have separated. Victor wrote that Johnny filed for divorce months ago. Weeks ago, Johnny was charged with domestic violence against Victor, but those charges were dismissed.
Yeah, there are all sorts of charges of adultery and emotional abuse and stuff.
I noted the passing of Charlotte Brooks. She was a longtime photographer. We have a picture over there. Photographer for Look magazine. Look magazine, it's hard to believe, folded in 1971, but she has died at 95. Her partner since 1941 was Julie Arden, who died in 2009. She taught photography in Dutchess County after the magazine folded, and she photographed a lot of the social issues of the 50s and 60s and all that stuff.
In Parkersburg, West Virginia, a science teacher was suspended for 4 days because he went on a Facebook rant against the Gay-Straight Alliance at the school. And then he was let back in when he said things like, oh, I love everyone, I don't mean anything bad, but by the way, you should all get concealed gun carry permits. Science teacher.
These are end times. These are end times, folks.
Jason Collins, the out gay basketball player now playing for the Brooklyn Nets, said, there was one guy I played against in the last couple of weeks who was making some anti-gay comments, but he's just a knucklehead.
Oh.
Didn't identify him. Took care of it himself. New York, I've been looking at the Eyes on the Prize videos.
Wonderful.
In preparation
about the civil rights movement.
Yes, a 14-part series that aired on PBS.
Yes, Ann Northrup has said she'd like to see a 14-part series on AIDS.
Or on LGBT history, or both combined, please. But I have to give a speech at NYU on April 10th. You can all come, and I'm looking at videos to pick out excerpts, and I'm looking at this. And one thing it said was that the civil rights movement had asked JFK for an executive order, non-discrimination thing, which he had promised in his campaign. But it took him a year into office before he issued the executive order.
He used to say, make me do it. Actually, Franklin Roosevelt used to say the same thing, and they did. They had to force him with the threat of a big demonstration to do in the munitions industry during the war to do a non-discrimination thing for African Americans.
So our campaign with Obama to get him to do things he has promised to do in his campaigns, including this ENDA executive order, is not unprecedented.
Right.
New York Times Magazine is the subject of some consternation for their article on bisexuality.
Yes.
I can never get his name right. He's a very quirky gay writer who's done a lot of controversial pieces over the years. And this one is, Benoit Denizet-Lewis. So this is a cover story on, does bisexuality exist?
Which could have been written 40 years ago.
Yeah.
It's really the same arguments. Now, I realize there's been more research and all that kind of stuff.
And he talked to some of the activists and some of the researchers and stuff. But what was missing for me in the piece was, first of all, any discussion of the idea that sexuality is a lot more complex for almost everybody.
Well, he kind of gets to that towards the end, especially for himself when he finds out that he's bisexual, or more bisexual than he thought, according to these tests that they do, which is either on your pupils or on your genitals.
Yeah.
And see how much they change.
And what they seem to do most of is studying self-identified gay people to see if they're really a little bisexual. And there's not a lot of study of self-identified straight people to see how complex their feelings are. Yeah. And that seems to me a lot more where the area of research should be.
Folks, the sexual orientation spectrum is very densely populated.
Across the board.
Yes.
And we're happy to see that the United States Postal Service will finally release a Harvey Milk stamp in May, and they promise a special big celebration.
Oh, boy.
They haven't told us what it is.
I hope it's one of those forever stamps. Then I could use it for a long time.
Oh, and our friend Kelly Cogswell who has written a new book, Eating Fire, My Life as a Lesbian Avenger, which should be fascinating when I finally get around to reading it. But
Weren't you a lesbian avenger?
I certainly was, although I never learned to eat fire. They did eat fire. But she was asked to read from this book, out of all places, HRC headquarters in Washington. There's an unprecedented event.
I hope she gave it to them. I'm sick of getting all these emails from HRC attacking these religious groups that discriminate when they're supporting an Employment Non-Discrimination Act that would let them discriminate.
And a Get Equal activist, while Kelly was inside doing this, posted signs on the wall outside of HRC on their headquarters wall complaining about their support of the too broad religious exemption in ENDA, and the HRC staffers came out and ripped those off the wall.
Now remember, when we advocate for this, we're not trying to stop the progress for LGBT rights, we're just trying not to codify bad stuff. What about this lesbian couple in New York?
Well, there's a good decision. Lesbian couple, are they a couple?
Well, they were
Two teachers.
They were that night.
Two female teachers. This happened 4.5 years ago. They had attended an evening performance at the school, a music performance by students, and they snuck off. They'd evidently had a little to drink, and they found an empty classroom, and they were having a good time. And they were caught.
They say it was a medical procedure. They do.
The security guard said they were naked on top of each other.
Whoa. Got to lock the door.
There's some dispute. So they were what, fired?
They were they were immediately fired.
And this last week they were rehired because the judge said, hey, it happens.
Teachers have done some things like this with kids and they have not gotten fired.
Right. And we all have a little mistake here and there. So congratulations to them.
Who hasn't made out at the office once or twice?
International news.
Well, in Uganda, Mrs. Janet Museveni, that's the wife of the president, says, if cows did not practice homosexuality, how could we, the human beings? And that's her basic test.
I hope someone has sent her the book that details
every species,
all the animals where homosexual behavior has been
confuse people like this with the facts.
Observed.
But the U.S. is sending more special ops forces and military aircraft to help President Museveni to go after Joseph Kony, who was hardly even a factor anymore. He's a bad guy, but he's not a direct threat. But they won't give money to something called the Interreligious Council of Uganda, which supported the law, other than for the treatment that they do for AIDS.
Yeah. And they've suspended a study of at-risk populations because they say it's too dangerous for gay people in Uganda because they may be identified by participating in the study. They are redirecting tourism money because they say it's not safe for LGBT people to go to Uganda. And they've moved some other events, some U.S. events out of Uganda.
But they're giving with one hand, taking with the other.
They are.
In Australia, the biggest ex-gay therapy service has folded. No one was willing to lead it.
And there's a consternation in Kenya where the parliament has passed a law, or is about to pass a law, that says men can marry multiple women. The female members of parliament got so furious they walked out.
Well, because it does not say vice versa. Women can marry as many men as they want.
Franklin Graham, a son of the Reverend Billy Graham, has brought more honor on himself by saying that Putin is right to protect kids from homosexual propaganda. He's been, Billy Graham's bad enough.
Anti-Muslim, he's terrible.
He's much worse. He's awful.
Joe Biden, we talked about him before, but at HRC he also said that LGBT rights should be an integral part of U.S. foreign policy.
Okay. Well, Hillary Clinton tried to set that standard for years, so I think we're on our way to that, and that's shown by what the U.S. has done in Uganda. In Siberia, Russia, thugs beat up a St. Patrick's Day flash mob because they mistook the St. Patrick's Day revelers for gay because they were wearing kilts.
In France, a bus driver was fired for dousing a lesbian couple, high school students, with water after he saw them kiss before getting on the bus. They fired him.
Yeah. Now, there's a fight going on between the European Union and Ukraine because for all this revolution in Ukraine, they nonetheless are one of the countries that is still trying to pass an LGBT propaganda law, like the Russian law. And simultaneously, they're applying for membership in the European Union.
Yep.
But the European Union has rules about non-discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity and expression. And so this has become a dicey issue between the European Union and Ukraine.
Well, the whole situation over there is very complex and does not, you've got neo-Nazis in that new Kiev government. It's not all, Anyway, well, speaking of the European Union, the Christian bed and breakfast owners in the United Kingdom are going to the European Court for the right to discriminate against same-sex couples. They see no prospects for winning in United Kingdom courts.
Good news from the Dominican Republic, where the United States has sent a gay ambassador, Wally Brewster, who used to be on the board of HRC, and his husband has accompanied him, and that has created some controversies there since the Catholic Archbishop, when they were on their way, started calling them faggots.
Yeah, so the Vatican envoy there was hosting a big diplomatic reception for all the diplomats. And
with the president of the country.
And sent a letter saying, don't worry, Wally is not going to bring his husband. He's not invited. So, but he had to back down.
He did, because the other diplomats refused to go to the reception if Wally's husband was not invited, and the reception was postponed. And so the Vatican envoy had to knuckle under, and they held the reception finally with the president, with all the diplomatic corps, and with Wally's husband in attendance.
The Pope called up and said, who am I to judge? But also in the Dominican Republic legislature, an anti-gay language was withdrawn from a big bill that also sought to lower the marriage age to 16 for boys and 14 for girls. So that attracted attacks from the right and the left.
And what will the Pope say to Obama? As we are taping on Wednesday afternoon, we know that Obama is scheduled to meet with the Pope tomorrow, Thursday, but you are seeing this Thursday night or later, so you know more than we do.
He's going to say to Obama, how do you stay so slim? What's your secret?
Well, Obama did that whole thing. There was that whole piece this week in the Times, probably in anticipation of this, about how Obama had learned all his values in Catholic churches in Chicago when he was a community organizer.
Well, I learned some values through the Catholic Church, too. It wasn't all evil. I mean, it just was very bad on women's stuff and gay stuff.
It's the administration.
And also, they worship a false god.
There's that.
That's the way I feel about it, folks.
I suspect Obama will not be saying that to the Pope.
AIDS news.
Yeah.
So, in San Mateo, California, health workers there have been creating fake profiles so that they can go on Grindr and other things like that to encourage men to get tested for HIV and other STDs. And I have friends who do that for real. 79% of the men remained engaged with the conversation when the contact informed them that they were really from the health department.
Well, people have been using, Manhunt and other websites to do AIDS education for years.
Well, they're saying we used to go into bars, but this is where everybody is, so this is how we're going to reach them.
Right,
so
exactly.
I don't object to it.
No, the controversy is not about doing the education, it's about...
the false profiles.
Exactly. And whether that's a bad idea.
Okay.
There is a new head of the White House National Office of AIDS Policy, Douglas Brooks from Boston. He's a social worker. He is
HIV positive.
He is HIV positive, and he's been involved. He's African American. He's been involved with issues around communities of color and HIV. And
he's from the Justice Resource Institute, where he was head of the Community Health and Public Policy.
But there's been some disappointment over the years with these White House offices and what they actually accomplish. And a wonderful event coming up next week at the New York Public Library. Women of Act Up, a panel discussion.
What is it? I got to put it in my book. I think I have it in my book.
April 1st, 7 to 9 p.m. at the New York Public Library. 7 p.m.
Get
New
your
York
books
Public
in.
Library,
7 p.m.
Tuesday.
on April Fool's Day.
Sarah Schulman is moderating.
Is it okay for men to come, or are we taking up space? No, I mean, is this a women event?
No.
Okay.
Maxine Wolf, Heidi Doro, Joan Gibbs, Karen Timor, Terry McGovern, Pat Navarro, Jean Carla Musto, all very, very important members of ACT UP. It's going to be a fantastic event. All these events at the Public Library have been great. We told you about Bill Ballman's last week. Really try to make that Tuesday, 7 p.m. at the New York Public Library.
And Gay City News asks, do we already have the tools to end AIDS? And yes, the fact is we do. And it's always good to remind people that the way we mean this is get tested, which is what they're seeking to do in San Mateo.
Yep.
Get tested, get on the drugs, you will suppress the virus, and you'll be infinitely less likely to pass it on. That's how we can end AIDS.
Yes, cut the transmissions. Now, entertainment news, sad news from the world of competitive reality TV.
Okay.
Little MK has been voted off of American Idol, but she made the top 10, so she'll still be
very
on the
good.
summer tour.
She had a lovely voice.
She did, but she was never really powerful enough to look like a star. She
Didn't
was
have
always a little
presence.
self-conscious, and in the way she dressed, in the way she sang, and I think she just really wasn't ready for it.
Well.
And then Diana Nyad was the first person voted off of Dancing with the Stars.
Wow.
While that Billy D.
Do you
Williams.
agree with this decision?
Well, she wasn't great, and she's probably not well known enough to. With all these shows, when you have audience voting, it's all about celebrity. Billy D. Williams is still on Dancing with the Stars because he's a bigger name, even though all he can do is walk around the dance floor with his 2 replaced hips or knees or whatever.
God bless him.
At 77. But it's about celebrity appeal.
Yeah. Well, I don't know what the appeal of, well, actually, I don't want to go out of order here. I want to go back to Tyler Glenn, who was the lead singer, we have a picture of him, of the new wave pop quartet Neon Trees. He has come out. He is also a lifelong Mormon, and he said that he thought the church was tolerant until the Prop 8 campaign. It took you that long to figure that out, and then it took him another several years to come out, but he's done it. We welcome you to the club.
Hi, Tyler.
Okay. Then I saw the musical Rocky, and I agree with the wisdom on that. It's a big bore until you get to the final 18 minutes where there's this fight scene, and I don't think that's worth it. The thing about it is, it's I liked the movie from years ago.
Sure.
But it's 2 inarticulate characters, right? Who hardly talk, and now they have to sing beautiful songs, which kind of undermines their characters.
I am happy to see the reunion and regeneration of the relationship of Santana and Brittany on Glee, my favorite lesbian couple on TV. Thank you, Glee, for bringing them back together.
We saw a movie that's coming out right now. It's called Stuff Happens by Errol Morris about Donald Rumsfeld. And Rumsfeld, the former Secretary of Defense during the Iraq War, gets his say, but his ridiculousness is just not picked apart by anybody really on it. So it was unsatisfying from that point of view.
Errol Morris was on Bill Maher's show for the sort of beginning
I heard it was
interviews.
rather testy.
Well, yes, because Bill Maher kept saying, "Oh, I kind of like Rumsfeld. He's a good guy. He's one of the good ones."
Oh my God, he's a war criminal.
Of course he is. And Errol Morris is saying, "Really? That's what you got from the movie?" And frankly, we don't think Errol Morris went after Rumsfeld enough. But there's Bill Maher saying, "Oh yeah, I kind of liked Rumsfeld."
If you want to come after me, that's why they were putting Andy Hum at AOL on the screen, because you write to me and I'll get you on our email list to get weekly program previews. Disney has introduced its first same-sex couple on a show. Good Luck Charlie is the name of the show. Yes, it's
well, they're a very pro-gay company. Yeah, I'm surprised it's taken them this long.
And then Lily Tomlin and Jane Fonda are starting a new Netflix series where they are longtime rivals brought together because their husbands fall in love with each other and want to get married.
Okay.
On Netflix.
I guess we could look forward to that, although I'm not a Netflix subscriber.
I am not. Sorry. We depend upon our viewers to tell us if that one's any good.
I'm waiting for Orange is the New Black to show up somewhere else so I don't have to subscribe to Netflix.
Which I see is shot at the Astoria Studios in Queens, New York.
And is very,
right
very,
here in town.
very popular.
Yeah.
All right, yes. If you want to get on our weekly email list, just 1 email a week to let you know what's going on.
Unless something really big breaks that you might not know about.
Then we'll tell you in a second email. But write to andyhum@aol.com. Go to the New York Public Library next Tuesday at 7 p.m. for the Women of ACT UP, and we will see you next week.
Yes.
Bye.
When we will review Aladdin, which is a whole new world.